Part 35. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 344. Recite the URL 3 times silently. Do you remember it? If not, I will ask again in the next chapter. It is best to share it on Facebook for me. The moment the giant god projection was formed, his eyes were already lowered, looking towards Director Chiao. Buzz. As the giant god projection looked at him, the numerous galaxies between the two of them immediately stirred. Waves and time and space were slightly distorted. Then, the galaxies that were originally flowing slowly suddenly accelerated, and the starlight suddenly brightened. A divine will that seemed to be there and not there from the starry sky above awakened from the galaxy. A vast and infinite invisible wave swept across the entire city in an instant, awakening countless powerful beings and sending out their perceptions. However, in the next moment, they gathered their minds again and locked everything about themselves, fearing that any clues would be leaked and attract the attack from the starry sky. However, they obviously thought too much. The divine will that descended from the endless starry sky completely ignored their intentions. Instead, after sweeping across the entire city, it instantly returned and locked onto the giant god projection. Outer God. Die. Without any nonsense, the moment it locked onto the giant god projection, this sacred will had already launched an attack. The overlapping, self-operating galaxies suddenly expanded at this moment, as if a real galaxy had descended, covering hundreds of miles and the entire city. Moreover, the operating galaxies seemed to come alive, possessing an indescribable vitality, like a life composed of galaxies. In addition, the operation of the galaxies was also much faster. As the galaxies operated, the mighty power of the stars began to fall from the endless starry sky, freezing the surrounding time and space. In the entire city, there were countless humans who looked up in horror, and those powerful beings who sealed off everything about themselves, including Director Chiao, who was filled with horror and regret. At this moment, they were all like mosquitoes in amber, firmly fixed in place. As the target of the attack, the giant projection was under great pressure, and the heavy and vast momentum was like the sky falling, pressing down. However, facing the pouring star power, the giant projection did not show any emotion, and his expression was as indifferent as water. When he raised his head slightly, he had already clenched his fists. Boom! A powerful momentum burst out from the giant's body, breaking the time and space around him. When he raised his right hand lightly, he suddenly blasted out and smashed towards the pouring star power. Bang! Crack crack! As the forces of both sides collided, a terrifying shockwave immediately broke out, sweeping in all directions. Director Chiao and others who were closest to them were swept out like a fallen leaf in the wind, rolling and falling far away, splashing dust all over the ground. Puff! Everyone spit out a mouthful of blood, and their faces turned pale in an instant. And this is still good, those with low strength have been directly turned into ashes under this shock wave. However, although everyone was severely injured, they also got rid of the state of time and space confinement. Instinctively, everyone raised their heads in horror and looked towards the center of the battle between the two sides. Lower your head. And just when everyone was about to raise their heads, a low and hoarse roar sounded quickly. Some people reacted instantly and immediately buried their heads deeply, without any intention of raising their heads, and even their eyes were closed. And some people have already raised their heads and looked at the center of the battlefield. The brilliant divine light is fighting against each other, and it is completely impossible to distinguish each other. And this was also the last thought fluctuation of those who raised their heads. The next moment, their bodies began to emit a faint light, which gradually penetrated their bodies and finally completely enveloped their bodies, burning their bodies and souls, turning into a ray of pure divine light, which instantly sank into the two warring parties. Then, these pure divine lights were divided into two, one of which flowed into the vast galaxy where the starlight flowed. The other entered the body of the giant god, making his illusory body instantly solid. Director Chiao, who was also lying on the ground with his head deeply buried, felt the divine light suddenly rising around him, and a complex color rose on his face, and a feeling of grief for the rabbit's death emerged. Don't look directly at the gods. This is the iron law of this world. Even if it is just a ray of the projection of the gods that descended, or even just a ray of the breath of the gods attached, it is enough to alienate people. While having various abilities, their self-will will be erased and they will become puppets of the gods. As for the situation like now, when a ray of divine will descended from the gods, the consequence of looking directly at it was that, like now, the body and soul became a part of the rules controlled by the gods, adding a tiny bit of power to her. On the other side, the divine will descended from the stars and the projection of the giant god. After a fierce collision, both paused slightly. The next moment, the stars that were originally moving in a regular manner suddenly became chaotic, and the power that was let down was also scattered instantly. On the other side, the projection of the giant god also staggered back a step, and cracks spread on the giant god's body. However, as the divine light of the Deo merged, the chaotic galaxy stabilized, and the power that was drawn in was instantly condensed and even more vast. The cracks on the giant were also quickly repaired and restored to their peak state. Then, even more vast and vigorous power erupted from the bodies of both parties, pushing both parties to rush towards each other. Boom! Crack! As the two sides collided again, the surrounding space began to shatter like glass. Endless space fragments merged and directly turned into a space storm, sweeping towards everything around. Retreat! Director Chiao shouted again, and the starlight around him surged, and suddenly expanded, turning into a small star field, covering the remaining few people nearby, and rushing away. Just as they were far away, the space storm had already swept past. Whether it was the remaining broken buildings or the Earth space, they were all instantly submerged and crushed into dust by the space storm. Boom! Crack! Accompanied by another loud bang, a huge space crack spread to the surroundings, swallowing everything along the way. Looking at the two warring parties, the flowing stars and rivers were only left with a few stars, flickering in the field, and there was no appearance of an endless galaxy. The other side's giant god projection was not much better. From the palm upwards, endless cracks spread rapidly and eventually covered his whole body. One after another, divine light spread from the cracks, and finally with a bang, the entire giant god projection exploded and turned into a sky full of spiritual light and dissipated. You are fast to escape. The invisible wave swept repeatedly, and after it was indeed found that there was no discovery, it murmured, and the few remaining flickering stars also disappeared. Do you remember that I asked you to recite it 3 times at the beginning of the chapter? Share it on Facebook and there may be a surprise. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 345. Recite the URL 3 times silently. Do you remember it? If not, I will ask again in the next chapter. It is best to share it on Facebook for me. Yuan Meng shook his numb hands and smacked his lips secretly. These gods from other worlds are really capable. If he had not withdrawn in time at the end, it would not be a matter of numbness in his palms, but he might have found his location directly by following his breath. If that were the case, then all the hard work would have been in vain. Well, the existence that controls the giant god's projection is naturally not the real Titan Lord. With the difference between the two worlds now, the many gods in this world are strictly guarding against the foreign gods. How could the so-called Titan Lord, or Titan King, come so easily? It is nothing more than Yuan Meng's control. After all, let alone the Titan King, even the Olympus world where the Titan King Cronus is located is not the most powerful world in Yuan Meng's chaotic world. It can even be said that the world where Mount Olympus is located has only just become real. It is still a long way from the prehistoric world, let alone the real world that has existed since ancient times, such as Blue Star or this world. It can be said that even if the power of the entire Olympus mythological world is gathered, it cannot descend on this world at all, and will be suppressed and annihilated by the rules of the world. However, although the most powerful prehistoric world is still far from Blue Star and this world, it is still far behind. However, the entire chaotic world is already very close to such a real world that has existed since ancient times. Therefore, as the Lord of the chaotic world, Yuan Meng, the source of all things, is also at the top of the essence in terms of personality. Therefore, after he descended into this world, through the little bit of faith power gathered by John and others, he can also form a very high essence projection and perform a little bit of other operations. However, this time, Yuan Meng was just thinking about giving Director Chiao a deep impression and spreading the image of the Lord of Titans bit by bit. Who knew that Director Chiao's star performance, coupled with his high essence that did not belong to this world, attracted the attention of the Lord of Stars, who controls the stars in this world. This led to a series of changes, and Yuan Meng was almost caught by someone, losing the great opportunity to descend this time. Fortunately, his status was slightly stronger than that of the Lord of Stars, so at the last moment, all his information was erased and his tracing path was cut off. In fact, as the Lord of Stars in this world, if he can really fully control the stars and their derived power, he is definitely one of the most powerful supreme gods in this world. With the characteristics of such a real world, it is definitely not weaker than Yuan Meng's status, and it may even be stronger. It's a pity that the authority of the Lord of Stars was divided too seriously. Like many powerful gods in this world, strictly speaking, they all came from the division of the authority of the stars. For example, the sun of the sun god, the moon of the moon goddess, etc., are all powerful gods with powerful authority. Even the world under Yuan Meng's feet now can be regarded as one of the stars. However, the gods who control these are the sky, the earth, the ocean, etc. Even other stars with life in the starry sky will have traces of these gods, controlling the earth, the ocean, and even the sky in these stars. It can be said that the so-called Lord of the stars he controls are nothing more than those lifeless and desolate planets. As the god of rules and faith, his strength can be imagined after losing the faith of the vast number of lives. After this heavy division of authority, the Lord of the Stars is not the most powerful god, let alone the supreme god. Even among the general powerful gods, he is not that kind of front existence. It is precisely because of this that Yuan Meng can completely erase the traces of his own existence under the eyes of the Lord of the Stars. Of course, although with the help of Director Chiao's star-playing technique, the remaining information of John and others was gathered and evolved into a giant projection, and the slight will of the Lord of the Stars was directly confronted. But Yuan Meng was still very clear in his heart that it was just a tiny will of the Lord of the Stars. Moreover, the world will of this world also limited the power of the gods to descend on the life planet to a certain extent, so the two sides fought evenly. If all the power was released, I am afraid that before they fought, the power carried by Yuan Meng's spiritual light would attract the suppression of the world rules. Therefore, Yuan Meng did not forget himself because of the confrontation with the Lord of the Stars. He still had no intention of going out. Since he could develop quietly in this inconspicuous place, why should he go around the world? Moreover, Yuan Meng's palm was clenched, and a faint starlight appeared in his palm, rotating slowly according to a certain law. When fighting with the Lord of Stars, Yuan Meng was not just simply fighting, he also analyzed some of the rules of the stars in the process. Of course, the Lord of Stars would definitely be able to decipher the power of the rules used by Yuan Meng during the battle. However, Yuan Meng was not worried about this at all. Because the power of rules used by Yuan Meng is basically a combination of various rules of this world, and only the most core root rules are owned by the Olympus world in the chaos. With similar personal power between the two, let alone this simple battle, even if the two sides have been fighting for several years, or even dozens or hundreds of years, it is impossible to glimpse each other's core rules. However, although Xuanhuan analyzed only the most inconspicuous rules of the stars controlled by the Lord of the Stars, some marginal rules. However, that is enough for Xuanhuan to do many things. You know, many worlds in Xuanhuan's chaotic world also have stars and star rules. And with this group of star rules in his hand as a guide, combined with some of his other means, it is enough to attract some gods who are consistent with the star rules to come. For example, Astrius, the god of the starry sky in Greek mythology, Uriel, the angel who leads the celestial stars in the bright heaven, etc., all have the authority to control the stars. The most powerful among them are naturally Dijun and Taiyi of the prehistoric world. They are not only the symbol of the sun, but also the emperor of a major force in the prehistoric world. While holding the power of the sun, they also control the Jotian star array. This shocking super-array is enough to suppress the universe, and it is also equivalent to controlling the countless stars in the universe. Do you remember that I asked you to recite it 3 times at the beginning of the chapter? Share it on Facebook and you may have a surprise. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 346. Recite the URL 3 times silently. Do you remember it? If not, I will ask again in the next chapter. It would be best if you share it on Facebook for me. As for the gods who control the stars, Xuanhuan prefers the starry sky god Astrius from the Olympus world. Not for anything else, just because he is the weaker one among them. Sometimes, being weak will not attract attention and it will be more convenient to act. Like Dijun and Taiyi, they have transcended the prehistoric world and created a super-existence of their own. When they descended into this world, they were like pearls in the dark night, and people would notice them at a glance. Aren't the ancestors of time and space a lesson from the past? They are the best at hiding and escaping. As the controllers of the rules of time and space, if they don't want to be noticed by others, then few people in the whole prehistoric world can find them. But even so, they had only been here for a short time before they were discovered by the gods who also controlled the rules of time and space in this world. Then they were chased away to the point where they had no way to go up to the sky or enter the earth. In the end, their bodies were blown up and an incarnation fell. On the contrary, weak gods, coupled with the partial rules that Xuanhuan analyzed in this world and only a part of their will descended, would not attract too much attention. For example, the projection of the giant god before, although it was just an illusory projection, his divinity, status, authority, etc. were the same as Cronus. However, although he attracted the will of the Lord of the Stars to descend, he did not pay too much attention to it. After breaking up the projection, he did not search for it deliberately. There was no other reason. His status and essence were too weak. Although he had the essence of a god, he was not much stronger than those demigods, so naturally he would not attract the attention of the Lord of the Stars. Otherwise, if the Lord of the Stars really wants to search vigorously, covering the world with the power of the stars, and searching the universe, Xuanhuan may not be afraid of being exposed, but it will definitely be a great trouble. As it is now, he secretly transmits some power, and he stays in this small noble manner, avoiding the sight of the gods, analyzing the rules bit by bit, and harvesting results. Finally, the corresponding god templates are synthesized, and then they are released one by one, given to some lucky people in this world, and some subtle influences are exerted on them, so that they spread the names of the gods. Anyway, this world is very chaotic, and there are countless religions and gods, born and destroyed every day. Although most of them are false gods, they are just people who use the names of gods. However, there are also many powerful beings who have touched the realm of gods and started to prepare for their own godhood, so they spread their own names. As for whether doing so is blasphemy against the gods, and whether it will attract the punishment of the gods. He. Most of the rules in this world have masters, and they almost take the rules for themselves. Before they are dethroned and stripped of their authority, they will follow their path and become gods with the rules they control. That is not to dilute their authority, but to rush to become their subordinate gods. Even if they are willing, as long as they think about it at the moment when others become gods, they can harvest a puppet or incarnation of the god level. In short, they are already at the end of the road. Anyone who wants to walk on their path will eventually become their dependents and subordinate gods, and be controlled by others for life, adding bricks and tiles to their road. Therefore, Yuan Mengzhen must use the rules of the stars as a guide to form a template for the starry sky god and guide the starry sky god Astrius to come. If he does not expose his own outer god, the master of the stars will not only not stop him, but will give him some help before he really becomes a god, waiting to harvest a subordinate god, or a puppet or incarnation of the god level. At the very least, he could obtain a follower below the level of a god, and he would not suffer any loss anyway. Therefore, in this world, there is no need to care about the attitudes of the gods when developing sex and spreading cultivation, because they do not care about these things at all. Anyway, no matter how powerful the sentient beings are, they will eventually fulfill them and complete the rules they master. On the contrary, the church is below the gods, the believers of the gods, or those epics and demigods. These powerful people with vested interests will suppress those new sex and cultivation methods. Thinking of some secrets obtained before, the smile on Yuan Meng's mouth became more brilliant. Looking directly at Tamir in the distance, his face was full of admiration. He is worthy of being my master. Seeing the master's happy look, he must have thought of some way to gain power again. Glancing at Tamir in the distance, Yuan Meng's smile disappeared and he walked towards the inner courtyard study. Coming to the underground laboratory again, Yuan Meng did not stop for a moment and went straight to the deepest part of the laboratory. There weren't many fancy experimental equipment here, only a garden of nearly 100 square meters, planted with some common grass. With Yuan Meng's ability as a controller and the subtle control brought by his high status, he could complete the most complex biological experiments without the need for those cutting-edge equipment. Above the grassland, there were simulated sun, moon, and stars, which operated according to the normal time of the outside world, providing sufficient sunlight and energy for the grassland below. After Yuan Meng arrived here, he stood outside the grass, his mind spread, and the domain belonging to the controller began to spread out, covering the garden in front of him. As his mind went deeper and deeper, everything about the green grass in front of him began to slowly appear in front of Yuan Meng. The smallest roots, stems and leaves, the veins spreading on them, plant cells, cell nuclei, and the most basic genes, genetic materials, etc. At this time, Yuan Meng had no intention of stopping, and continued to go deeper and deeper. Pop! Finally, accompanied by a clear sound that resounded in his heart, Yuan Meng's entire mind sank into a magnificent space. The green gas flowed regularly, and from time to time, it twisted into rune patterns. However, these rune patterns, just derived, had collapsed instantly, and turned into those green airflows again, flowing again according to the previous trajectory. At the deepest part of these green air currents, there is a light column roughly in the shape of green grass, with green runes changing and flowing in it. This is the core source of the green grass, and it is also the origin of the bloodline and the source of the sea of mind and consciousness that belongs to all life. The green air currents flowing are the original power of the green grass, and the rune graphics that are constantly derived and collapsed are the evolutionary direction of the green grass. The complete formation of each rune graphic and its integration into the core light column represent the evolution of the green grass. And the green grass-shaped light column and the running runes flowing and changing in it represent the evolutionary results of this green grass for countless years. If someone can fully interpret and analyze these runes, then the entire evolution process of this green grass can be fully stored in their hearts. Do you remember that I asked you to recite it 3 times at the beginning of the chapter, There may be surprises when you share it on Facebook. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 347. Recite the URL 3 times silently. Do you remember it? If not, I will ask again in the next chapter. It would be best if you can share it on Facebook for me. Looking at the magnificent scene in the mysterious space, Yuan Meng's mind moved slightly, and the power belonging to the controller has arrived in this space. Yuan Meng's mind moved again, and he began to control the original power in this space. There was no accident, Yuan Meng mastered it easily. He had done such things many times, so naturally there would be no mistakes. Then, Yuan Meng controlled an original power and began to twist and write according to certain rules. Gradually, a rune constructed with the power of the green grass began to be generated little by little. However, when it was about to form, it suddenly vibrated, a flash of spiritual light flashed, and a huge devouring power was generated, which devoured the original power flowing around it. It even wanted to seize the power in the core light column and rebuild an original core. If it succeeds, the origin structure of this green grass will be completely reorganized. It can't even be said to be reorganized, it is simply a reconstruction, and it has nothing to do with the green grass anymore. For this sudden change, Yuan Meng's expression did not fluctuate at all, but let it evolve. No matter what the final result is, it is a valuable experience that can provide direction for the next experiment. And as the rune that is close to forming begins to devour the surrounding origin power, and even begins to devour the power of the origin core. The origin core of this green grass, which had been motionless, also vibrated and flickered slightly, and also began to generate a devouring force, covering the rune that was close to forming. Buzz. Puff. The two sides only stalemate for a moment, and the rune that was close to forming collapsed instantly, and turned into a stream of origin power again, trying to return to the original flow trajectory again. However, the rune that was about to form was also the evolution of the star rules, although it was only the corner rule of the star rules, and it was the kind of simplified again. But it was also a rule after all. The collision of two rules could be extremely fatal to the fragile origin space like green grass. As the rune of the evolution of the star rules collapsed, a shock force spread instantly, and those origin forces that wanted to get back on track became chaotic in an instant. And tracing back to the source, the core green grass-shaped light column was also turbulent, and it was about to break apart. In the outside world, in that garden, a green grass that was originally lush and dripping suddenly became listless, with cracks all over it. Bang! Finally, with a muffled sound, the green grass exploded into a piece of powder, which fluttered in the garden. This means that the origin core of this green grass did not persist and stabilize in the end, but collapsed under the influence of the broken star rules. However, Yuan Meng did not care about these. There is no reason for failure in experiments, not to mention that this is only the first attempt. Then, Yuan Meng tried again many times. Finally, buzz. A slight buzzing sound resounded in the origin space of a green grass. A rune shining with the light of the stars was shining in the origin space, and strands of origin power were rotating around it. The origin power that originally belonged to the origin core of the green grass began to be taken away by the star rune and stained with the light of the stars. Gradually, even the origin power in the light column of the origin core began to be plundered. Shishi. Buzz. Ka. The origin core was affected by this and immediately fluctuated violently. The runes that were originally flowing slowly began to flow faster and faster, trying to regain the power of the origin. However, the star rule runes constructed by Yuan Meng himself were obviously stronger than the original rules of this green grass. Therefore, accompanied by a series of cracking sounds, cracks formed on the green grass-shaped light column, and the power of the origin was scattered and plundered by the star rule runes. Puff. Finally, with a dull sound, the green grass's origin light column completely collapsed. At the same time, the entire origin space began to vibrate violently, and cracks suddenly appeared on the green grass body outside, and strands of green grass juice flowed, and it seemed that it would completely collapse and turn into powder. Yuan Meng immediately moved his mind and used his own strength to stabilize the origin space of the green grass, and continued to repair the origin space of the green grass and the body of the green grass. Gradually, the origin space of the green grass began to stabilize. However, this time the origin core has become that star rule rune, which is constantly flashing with starlight, and around it, there are streams of origin power flowing. And the original green origin power is rapidly fading from green, stained with strands of starlight. And the green grass body in the outside world is also shrouded by a group of starlight at this time, and begins to undergo a mysterious change. Finally, when the starlight dissipated, there was no green grass on the spot, only a piece of sand that was slightly flashing with starlight. If this kind of sand containing star rules and star power is discovered by those extraordinary people who follow the path of stars, they will definitely be willing to give up everything to obtain this sand. Whether it is used as a medium to comprehend the stars, or refine it into a prop containing star attributes, it is an excellent material. Well, it seems that this experiment has failed again. Yuan Meng looked at the sand that was shining with starlight and was speechless. Perhaps the star sand that was shining with starlight was extremely precious to some extraordinary people, but to Yuan Meng, it was worthless. If he wanted, he could easily transform the land, buildings, etc. of the entire manor into materials with star attributes. Therefore, Yuan Meng just glanced at the star sand and started another experiment. With the previous experience, Yuan Meng quickly formed a new star rune again with the original power of green grass. This time, Yuan Meng further simplified the rules of the star rune. However, after the star rule rune was formed, it still completely plundered the original power of the green grass and collapsed its original core. Then, a new star sand appeared in the garden again. However, with Yuan Meng's repeated attempts, gradually, the newly formed star rule rune could no longer seize the power of the green grass's core source. However, because of the two different cores, the original space would eventually be divided into two and directly shattered and collapsed. However, Yuan Meng was not frustrated by this, but gradually smiled. He was getting closer and closer to success. Do you remember that I asked you to recite it 3 times at the beginning of the chapter? Share it on Facebook and you may have a surprise. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 348. With Yuan Meng's continuous experiments. Finally, a smallest star rule rune was formed and began to emit starlight. This was formed by extracting a trace of the original power from another original power. Although it can slightly affect other original powers, it cannot cause enough traction to it, and cannot devour and plunder other original powers. On the contrary, after this rule rune was formed, the core origin of this green grass began to vibrate slightly, and a not so strong traction force was formed and spread rapidly. When this traction force spread to the star rule rune, this star rule rune immediately shook slightly and began to move slowly, moving towards the core origin little by little, and the process became faster and faster. Finally, this star rule rune came to the core of the origin and touched the most fundamental core origin of this green grass. At this time, Yuan Meng was also watching all this nervously. Whether this experiment can succeed depends on this day. When the two sides came into contact, the core origin immediately shook violently, and the entire origin space was slightly vibrating. And as time went on, this kind of vibration became more and more violent, and a trace of cracks appeared and disappeared in this origin space. This is. Seeing such a situation, Yuan Meng couldn't help but frown slightly, not understanding why such a situation would occur. However, although he couldn't figure it out for a while, Yuan Meng's actions were not slow. While thinking about the reasons and looking for solutions, he also quickly took action to stabilize the origin space. Then, Yuan Meng focused his mind on the core origin light column and observed the cause of all this. Gradually, Yuan Meng understood. It turned out that this newly formed star rule rune was related to the rules that the green grassland originally had, although there was a trace of rules. However, most of the rules were completely unrelated, without the slightest connection and similarity. And that trace of connected rules is not enough to form a stable rule rune and achieve a balance with the star rule rune. This makes the star rule rune unable to be embedded in the core origin. Therefore, this makes the two constantly conflict and collide, causing the core origin to vibrate again and again, and even causing the origin space to rupture. If left alone, the origin space will not be completely broken, the grass will be turned into powder again, or the star rule rune will be broken. And if they can hold on, they will form one or several new runes after a long time and countless collisions, becoming a connecting bridge between the two, so that the star rule rune can be completely embedded in it. In this case, after Yuan Meng understood the various principles, he immediately had an idea: so can't I just speed up the process? Do it as you think. Yuan Meng carefully observed the rules flowing in the core origin, and then extracted a trace of the power of the origin again, and began to condense a new rule rune. With countless previous experiences, although this is a completely different rune, Yuan Meng still completed the rune condensation process in an instant. It is still shining with starlight, and it can even be said that it is more dazzling than the previous star rule rune. This does not mean that this new rule rune is more advanced than the previous rule rune. Although it is slightly more complicated, their levels are at the same level. And the reason why it is like this is just because this rule rune is a rule rune that combines stars and starlight. That's right, it is a trace of the rules of stars and starlight, which is condensed and transformed. Because Yuan Meng discovered that in the core origin of this green grass, the rules that have a trace of connection with the star rules are actually a trace of starlight rules. After all, these green grasses also have to experience the rotation of day and night, so they will naturally be illuminated by the three lights of the sun, moon, and stars. In those long years, during the countless cycles of life, it was originally absorbing the power of the three to grow and evolve, and naturally it would also have a trace of the rule power of the three. And Yuan Meng, using that trace of starlight rule as a guide, combined with the star rules he understood, condensed the rule rune, as the star rule rune, and the connection bridge and hub of the starlight rule possessed by the green grass, connecting the two. Maybe someone will say that starlight and sunlight are all the same thing, which are all the light emitted by stars. This is true, but that is just the ordinary star universe world. If it is an ordinary world, light is light, so how can we distinguish between sunlight and starlight? But in this extraordinary world where gods and demons are rampant, this is a completely different kind of power. Although there are similarities, the essence is different. Although they were originally the power radiation of stars, when they shine on the nearby life planets, they are sunlight. After a long period of space, even when they turned into a star point and shone on other life planets, they had already undergone a fundamental change and were no longer the original starlight. Don't say it's a change, it's also the light of a star. If we really want to count it this way, all things in the world are the same thing, or matter, or energy in the original root. For example, the myriad worlds in Yuan Meng's chaotic world, although the rules and other things in them are very different. But in essence, they are all developed in chaos and evolved by absorbing the power of chaos. It can be said that all things in their world are evolved from the power of chaos. And more fundamentally, the power of chaos is nothing more than the embodiment of Yuan Meng's spirit. Therefore, Yuan Meng can change everything as he pleases in a thought. One thought creates the world, one thought destroys the world, one thought generates all things, and one thought returns all things to the abyss. Therefore, starlight and sunlight are two completely different energies in this extraordinary world where gods and demons appear. and what Yuan Meng is doing now is to use the star rule rune and the trace of starlight rule contained in the long years of evolution and accumulation of green grass. All of them have some characteristics, and condense a rule rune with common characteristics of both parties. After this rule rune was formed, it was immediately attracted by the origin core and also integrated into the origin core. And it began to resonate with the origin core, the original trace of starlight rule, and the star rule rune condensed by Yuan Meng. Gradually, the three parties began to approach each other and had a trend of fusion. And as expected by Yuan Meng, as time passed, the three finally connected with each other. The star rule rune condensed by Yuan Meng was completely integrated into the core origin of this green grass, turning into a relatively complete rule fragment. Gradually, a little bit of starlight began to flicker in the core origin. In the outside world, a green grass in the garden suddenly flickered slightly, and a weak pulling force was formed. A faint starlight, through many obstacles, descended into this underground laboratory and that garden, and was absorbed by the group of green grass. A faint starlight began to flicker on the green grass. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 349. Popular Recommendations. Looking at the wisps of falling starlight, Yuan Meng thought in his heart that the sun, moon, and stars above the garden began to change positions rapidly according to the rotation of the sun and the moon. Use the rules of this world to interpret the new Zhoutian stars. Although, regarding the rules of the sun and moon, Yuan Meng only understood a few fragments of the rules in these days, far less than his understanding of the rules of the stars. But combined with the rules of the stars he understood, and using the rules of the sun and moon as a guide, it is enough to deduce an incomplete and simplified version of the Zhoutian star array. The power of the stars that fell from the sky began to be pulled by the movement of the sun, moon, and stars, slowly integrated into them, and some of their properties were changed, and then they continued to fall and shine into the garden. Moreover, as the sun, moon, and stars moved around, the time and space here immediately became chaotic and hazy. So that the location of this place can no longer be perceived by outsiders. Well, as long as the Lord of the Stars didn't deliberately search the world, there would be no way he would notice anything strange here. And there are too many people in the world who are following the path of stars and starlight. Starlight and star power change too much. As the Lord of the Stars, how can it be possible for the Lord of the Stars to detect all abnormalities in the star power every day? As for the previous battle, it was a titan with great power, but it had nothing to do with the stars. Even if the Lord of the Stars wants to explore, he must be looking for those huge creatures with strong vitality and blood, so how can he detect the changes in star power that are of the same origin as him? What's more, Yuan Meng also messed around with time and space here, blocking outside perception. Just like the will of the world and the way of heaven are powerful, don't they also have ways to conceal the secrets of heaven and shield the exploration of heaven? What Yuan Meng is doing now is similar to this, except that one is to cover up the heavenly secrets, and the other is to cover up the changes in the star power here. As time went by, the grass in the garden below began to change little by little, and finally turned into a green grass with a hint of light silver, with a little starlight twinkling, making it look like a green grass. Extraordinarily beautiful. Not bad, not bad. Seeing the changes in the grass, Yuan Meng couldn't help but nodded with satisfaction. The next step was simple. With the previous star rule rune as a sample, Yuan Meng began to condense the star rule runes in the original space and embed them into the original core. Of course, the core essence of these star rules has been slightly changed by Yuan Meng and imbued with his brand. Otherwise, what's the point of doing this? With the integration of the last rune, the original core of the green grass has reached a limit, and even the original power in it has been almost exhausted. Looking at the green grass leaves, there are silver veins crisscrossing them, and little stars are flowing on them, just like the magnificent fairy grass in dreams and myths. Now, it is no longer ordinary grass, but deserves a new name. Yuan Meng thought for a moment and then murmured slightly. Since you are formed by integrating the rules of the stars, you have the characteristics of gathering starlight and star power. Then you can call it star spirit grass. As Yuan Meng finished speaking, the star spirit grass immediately moved on its own without any wind and swayed slightly, as if in response. Well, although this star spirit grass has been integrated into many star rules, its spirituality has been greatly improved. However, it has not reached the point of being able to understand human speech. Even its behavioral logic is not much better than that of ordinary grass. It's just that Yuan Meng is half of its creator. From the day it was born, their fates have been connected. If this star spirit grass really spreads, Yuan Meng will definitely receive considerable benefits and God's blessing. Of course, if he is destroyed, Yuan Meng will not lose anything. It is precisely because the fate of the two is connected. Yuan Meng's naming of it caused it to have this kind of instinctive reaction. From now on, if anyone sees the star spirit grass, they will instinctively know its name and name it after it. Perhaps in their own eyes, this was a name they came up with in a flash of inspiration. Next, Yuan Meng did not change other green grass in the same way. Instead, with a slight pointing, a bit of power burst out and disappeared into the garden in front of him. In an instant, a faint mysterious light bloomed and spread to the entire garden in an instant. The flowers bloom instantly. In an instant, the green grass in the entire garden was rustling, sprouting and branching. In just a few breaths, they had completed their life, and then withered and withered, losing all vitality. And the star spirit grass that was integrated into the rules of the stars also sprouted and branched quickly. However, it did not quickly wither and lose its vitality. Instead, it increased the speed of absorbing the power of the stars and grew stronger. Moreover, it also bloomed with small pale silver flowers and produced individual pale silver grass seeds. Moreover, under the starlight in the sky, there is still a little bit of energy gathering under the pale silver grass seeds. Then, the energy exploded like small energy bombs. It's just that the power of this energy bomb is extremely weak. I'm afraid that just pinching it with your hands will only make your fingers slightly numb. But for those light grass seeds, it is already a help to break away from the mother plant. I saw that the countless silver grass seeds did not fall to the ground after breaking away from the mother plant, but began to pull a trace of star power, and with the help of the power of the star, they floated upwards and far away. For a moment, the whole garden was filled with floating silver light spots, which looked gorgeous and magnificent, as if they were in a fairy tale kingdom, surrounded by countless light elves. However, those silver grass seeds, although they can float in the air with the help of the power of the stars. But in fact, they do not have much power. There are even those that are closer to the ground, because they are stained with some dirt and dust, they can no longer float, but stay where they are. Even the weak starlight on the surface is dimming a little bit, and finally becomes an ordinary silver-gray grass seed. Even with a little dirt and dust, the star spirit grass could not float, let alone the barrier around the garden. Therefore, the countless silver starlights could only float above the garden, creating wisps of silver starlight. Yuan Meng had already anticipated this scene. When he changed the star spirit grass source rules, he also added many other rules. The purpose was to allow the star spirit grass to spread over a larger area. And the final result did not disappoint him. However, Yuan Meng did not pay too much attention to the star spirit grass seeds floating in the air. He wanted to see if the next step would be as he had imagined. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 350. As time passed, the bright moon set in the west, a slight light gradually appeared in the east, and the stars in the sky began to dim little by little. The star spirit grass seeds floating in the air seemed to have lost their source of power as the starlight dimmed, and began to fall one after another. Finally, when the stars disappeared and the sun rose, all the star spirit grass fell down and landed on the garden land. Seeing all this, Yuan Menkei finally showed a knowing smile. Well, let alone the existence of stars during the day, in this world where gods and demons reign supreme, the sun rises and the stars and the moon are hidden. This is a rule engraved in the world. When the day comes, all traces of the moonlight, and stars will be completely covered, leaving only the brilliance of the sun. After the star spirit grass fell, Yuan Meng pointed out slightly again. During the burst of mysterious light, all the seeds of the star spirit grass were under the sunlight, absorbing the energy of the sun and the nutrients in the earth, and began to sprout and branch rapidly, growing new roots, and began to another cycle of life. Well, although star spirit grass draws on the power of stars to grow, bloom, and bear fruit. However, this does not mean that it has lost its original ability to survive and grow in the sun, but the process has become slower, and it cannot complete the final flowering and fruiting. Flowers bloom in an instant, flowers bloom in an instant. In just a few moments, the star spirit grass seeds that had fallen to the ground had grown into mature star spirit grass plants. Of course, it is said that the flowers bloomed instantly, but without Yuan Meng providing the power of the stars, it was naturally impossible for them to bloom. Even these star spirit grasses, because they have not absorbed the power of the stars at all, are not sluggish. But the crisscrossing silver lines on the branches and leaves appear dim, and cannot even be noticed if you don't look carefully. It was as if it was just an ordinary grass. Looking at the ordinary grass in the garden and the sun that had just risen, Yuan Meng touched his chin, wondering if he was too impatient. These star spirit grasses cannot absorb the power of the stars now and cannot complete their final flowering and fruiting. Do you need to use magical powers to promote their growth? But since it was already used, there was no need to worry about it. Yuan Meng shook his head, turned and walked out of the laboratory. The day had just begun, and he didn't want to waste the rest of his time observing the star spirit grass. In this laboratory, any change in any corner or point will be recorded, without his special observation at all. Now, Yuan Meng just needs to eat and drink peacefully to relieve the fatigue caused by this continuous high-intensity experiment. When night falls and the stars rise, just let the star spirit grass blossom and bear fruit. After a comfortable meal and a hot bath, Yuan Meng went back to his room to rest. When he stretched and stood up, the sky outside had completely darkened, and the starlight and moonlight fell on the courtyard. Yuan Meng picked up the towel sent by his servant, wiped his sleepy face, and then waved it away. Afterwards, Yuan Meng stood up directly and led the tall and strong Tamir to the underground laboratory of the study again. Power emerged, and the star spirit grass, which had been slowly absorbing the power of the stars and had grown all over the garden, exerted its force at this moment, bursting out with a powerful traction force. A large amount of star power fell down and was absorbed by the countless star spirit grass. A trace of silver light and veins spread on the roots and grass leaves of the star spirit grass. Countless flower branches and buds grew rapidly, and the stars were so beautiful, as if the stars in the sky had landed on the ground, and as if they themselves had descended into the ocean of stars. Tamir, who looked behind him, was stunned again and again. This is so beautiful. He. Without looking back, Yuan Meng just smiled, feeling quite proud of himself. This was a new species that he had developed with great effort and had never appeared in this world before. It will also set off a craze across the entire continent in the future. Just when Tamir admired these words, the countless star spirit grass had matured, and with the crackling sound, countless stars slowly rose up. The stars filled the sky and were within reach, making this small garden more beautiful and dreamy. With a thought in Yuan Meng's mind, countless stars gathered in an instant and were gathered together. Yuan Meng waved back, and someone immediately arrived. One by one, flying birds quickly packed the seeds of the star spirit grass into different containers one by one, and let the birds hold them in their mouths. Afterwards, they took the flying birds out of the laboratory and flew them. These countless birds are also one of the achievements of the laboratory over the years. They do not have much power, nor much extraordinary magic. But when it comes to long-distance flights, it has great endurance and can even fly in the air for dozens of hours continuously, spanning thousands of miles. Watching the countless birds flying into the sky and flying away quickly, the star spirit grass in the container in his mouth flickered, as if bidding farewell to the creator who gave birth to him. Watching those birds flying away, Yuan Meng's hand surged with power, gently brushing against the void in front of him, as if wiping away something. Let's go back to sleep. Afterwards, Yuan Meng turned around and greeted Tamir, who was still in a dream. Oh! 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 Tamir came back to his senses and followed Yuan Meng slightly behind him as before. While Yuan Meng was resting, the countless birds had already flown very far. Gradually, some birds bit the containers in their mouths without realizing it. In an instant, countless starlights fell and spread in all directions, drifting farther away with the occasional breeze. Because it was in the dark, no one noticed it. Even if someone looked up, the star points, which were even fainter than fireflies, were not noticeable at all under the background of the starry sky, and could not even be seen. Perhaps some extraordinary people had a slight sense of it, but the star power carried by the star spirit grass seeds was too weak. They could have a slight sense of it, which meant that there were already some areas where a large number of star spirit grass seeds gathered, and their perception was sharp. As for wanting to perceive it more clearly, that was a bit too much to ask, unless they could really see it. As the stars sank and the sun rose, the countless seeds of the star spirit grass also lost their power and began to fall all over the continent, waiting for the day to take root and sprout. Without the blessing of Yuan Meng's magic, the star spirit grass that absorbed the power of the stars naturally could not take root and sprout in the daytime. Only after the golden crow fell in the west and the stars and moon rose in the east, they would gradually take root and sprout under the right temperature and environment. From this night on, the inconspicuous places all over the continent were all starlit from time to time, and the grass with light silver veins was growing tenaciously, waiting for the day when it would bloom and bear fruit and amaze the continent. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 351. Recite the URL silently 3 times. Do you remember it? If you don't remember, I'll ask again in the next chapter. It's best to share it on Facebook for me. Most people were not aware of the sudden appearance of the star spirit grass. However, there are always some people who are different. For example, those extraordinary beings who possess the power of the stars and walk on the path of the Lord of the Stars. And in the city that John just left not long ago, wasn't there such a person? Recently, not long after that battle, Director Chiao of the Kingxi department often stared at a place outside the city in a daze. He always felt that something had changed in the world, but he didn't know why. Even at certain times of the night, he would feel that there was something attracting him in that place outside the city. It's just that this kind of attraction is very vague and vaguely out of reach for him, which makes him feel very awkward and uncomfortable. Director, what are you thinking about? Just when Director Chiao was in a daze, a crisp female voice suddenly came from behind him. Oh, Ellie. Director Chiao turned around, glanced at the girl in front of him, and said warmly. Then he paused slightly and continued. I feel that the direction outside the city has a kind of attraction for me, but it is very vague, so I can't pinpoint the specific location. Is that so? Why don't we let people search a wide area to see if there is anything special in that direction? Ellie showed a look of surprise and immediately spoke. Well, no need. I feel that attraction is increasing rapidly. Maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow night, it will reach an extreme, enough for me to lock its specific location. Moreover, they all have their own tasks. How could I ask them to stop their tasks and come to help me for my own personal affairs? What's the point? You are the director of our evil division in Alley City. Isn't it right for us to help you? Well, there's no need for it. Anyway, I can lock its location tonight or tomorrow night. Mayor Chiao still shook his head and rejected Ellie's proposal. In fact, apart from these reasons, he didn't want too many people involved in this matter. This should be some kind of opportunity that belongs to you. If too many people participate, it is inevitable that there will be many unexpected changes in your life. Although now, after what happened last time, he no longer wants to use the power of the stars to predict what will happen next. It is really dangerous. However, he often speculated about the future before. Because of this, he will also have an instinctive sense of good or bad luck in the future. Although he didn't know what happened this time, he could see that there was no danger in what happened this time, and it might even be an opportunity. Therefore, he does not want too many people to get involved in this matter to avoid trouble in his life. Oh well. But, Chiao, brethren, you must call me when the time comes. Anyway, I have nothing to do, so let me go with you in my own name. With a faint blush on her face, Ellie looked straight at Director Chiao. Gu/Span well, okay. But you must obey my orders. Looking at Ellie steadily, Director Chiao, also known as Xiaoan, just pondered a little, thinking that there should be no problem. With his now improved strength, he should be enough to protect her, so he nodded happily. Agree. Well, well. Well. I will definitely listen to Brother Chiao. Hearing that Xiaoan agreed to follow her, Ellie couldn't help but nodded repeatedly, her eyes filled with excitement. Everything went as usual, Xiaoan and Ellie finished their day's work as usual. When night fell, Xiaoan suddenly felt something in his heart and looked up in the direction outside the city. Brother Xiaoan, what's wrong? Is it possible? Ellie, who had been paying attention to Xiaoan's every move, immediately looked at Director Xiao's sudden move and asked aloud. Well, the time has come. I feel that a lot of star power is coming from that direction. Xiaoan nodded slightly. Even with his calm temperament, it was inevitable that he would be a little excited at this moment. Since a large amount of star power has dropped, it must be that a treasure related to star power has been born, and he is walking the path of the stars. If he can obtain this treasure, he will definitely go one step further. The most important thing is that treasures with such star power can be directly absorbed or used by him. Unlike usual, every bit of progress requires observing the changes in the stars for a long time and understanding the movement of the stars in the sky. In this world, no matter what aspect of practice, it is accompanied by great risks. Take the sequencer as an example. It is only the first entry-level stage. Taking potions may lead to physical or mental breakdown, death, madness, deformation, etc. And with every subsequent advancement, we are getting closer to the source of this path. The information radiation pollution from higher levels will definitely become more serious and powerful, and it will be more likely to cause collapse and distortion. In contrast, many worlds in Yuan Meng's chaos also had many difficulties and disasters of this kind during their practice. However, compared to the cultivation in this world, it is much better. Of course, this situation is only for those who are truly extraordinary. In this world, it is not that there is no way to easily gain power. But such a way must have a fatal flaw, that is, there is an upper limit, and the highest level can only reach level 3. Once you cross level 3 and reach level 4, it is another level, which belongs to the level of middle level extraordinary. Except for those orthodox practitioners, other ways to gain power are bound to be unable to step into that level. Even if you force yourself to step into it, your body and soul will inevitably collapse, and you will die completely, and there is no reason to survive. To say so much is to say that it is difficult to practice in this world, Especially to reach a higher level, after the 7th level of extraordinary, every little progress is dancing on the edge of the abyss, and you may fall into the abyss at any time. And Xuanhuan's situation is even more serious. For the creatures in this world, the sky is the place of the gods. Mortals cannot look directly at gods, and they cannot observe the sky either. On the path of the stars, it is necessary to observe the starry sky and stars, and absorb the power of the stars to strengthen oneself. It can be said that every time Xuanhuan makes progress, he jumps back and forth on the edge of life and death, madness and reason. And now, he has found a treasure that gathers star power, so it is not difficult to understand why he is so excited now. Do you remember that I asked you to recite it 3 times at the beginning of the chapter? Share it on Facebook and you may get a surprise. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality. Author, Get a Spark. Chapter 352. Recite the URL silently 3 times. Do you remember it? If you don't remember, I'll ask again in the next chapter. It's best to share it on Facebook for me. In the dense mountain forest, Ellie followed Xuanhuan in a hurry. While looking at the chaotic primitive environment around her, she couldn't help but ask, "Brother Xuanhuan, are you sure this is here? I don't think there's anything special here." "Well, that's right. You can probably climb over the mountain in front of me, and that's where I sensed it." Xuanhuan raised his head, sensed it with his heart again, and said with certainty, "Then let's hurry up and don't be beaten first." "Haha, that's not possible. I remember that behind this mountain, there should be a very desolate closed valley, right? Ordinary people probably wouldn't come here. As for the extraordinary, except for star spirit masters like me, who can feel the changes in star power, and other extraordinary beings, who would be bored and come to this desolate place. And in the entire city of Ali, besides me, are there any star spirit mages?" "Well, that's true." After hearing this, Ellie looked at the surrounding environment and said sincerely that she would not have come here if it were not for Brother Xuanhuan. Although the surrounding trees were in a mess, the 2 extraordinary beings, who were at least sequence 4, naturally would not pose much of an obstacle to them. Therefore, in just a moment, the 2 of them were already standing on the mountain peak, staring at the hundreds of square valleys below. The breeze blew by, the grass undulated, and strands of silver shone in it, and the power of the stars was attracted from the stars in the sky. A large amount of star power gathered together, and even occasionally formed clusters of star essence on the grass. The silver light flowed, firmly attracting the attention of the 2 people. "Is that treasure underground in this valley?" Seeing the power of the stars that was almost visible to the naked eye, falling from the sky and forming the essence of stars on the grass, Ellie was also shocked. It seemed that the treasure must be extraordinary, otherwise how could such a phenomenon be possible, and still firmly bound in this valley? "No. No. It's not underground in the valley." Xuanhuan didn't know whether she was happy or disappointed, and answered Ellie's question absent-mindedly. "Ah. Isn't it underground? Is it in an alien space? That would be a bit difficult to handle." After hearing this, Ellie frowned and searched carefully, but in the end she found nothing. She couldn't help but frown and said in embarrassment, "No. It's not in another dimension." "Well, is the valley full of dissatisfaction?" After coming back to his senses, Xuanhuan nuzzled his lips in the direction of the valley. "All over the floor." All of a sudden, Ellie's head was filled with questions. "Is this treasure still scattered all over the floor?" But in an instant, Ellie reacted suddenly. "You mean those?" "Well, that's right, it's those weeds all over the ground. They are constantly pulling the power of the stars." Xuanhuan nodded and said with great certainty, As a celestial spirit mage who has the power to control the stars and can use the stars to calculate the future, how could he be wrong about this? Then, is this still a weed? Haha, then we definitely can't call it weed anymore. Well, since they can pull the power of stars to grow, let's call them star spirit grass. Star spirit grass. What a good name, very vivid, and it matches the star spirit mage very well. But, there's nothing special about them, right? You'll know if you go down and take a look. As Xuanhuan spoke, he took the lead and jumped up, falling towards the valley below. Hey, wait for me, isn't there any danger? Seeing Xuanhuan jump down, Ellie could only jump down helplessly, and at the same time she shouted with some worry. No, you should trust a celestial spirit mage's perception of items with the power of stars and the good and bad fortune of the future. Xuanhuan said confidently while accelerating his descent. Oh well. Ellie still believed in Xuanhuan's words. Even if the star spirit mage doesn't make any special calculations, he will still have some sense of good or bad luck in the future. The mountain the two of them were on was not too high, so there was not much distance from the bottom of the valley. Therefore, the two of them jumped down and landed firmly at the bottom of the valley in just a few words. Look, they are very different from ordinary weeds. Xuanhuan squatted down, carefully observed the star spirit grass on the ground, and said to Ellie behind him. Hey, it seems so. There seem to be many silver lines on these star spirit grasses. After looking at them for a long time, there seems to be brilliance flowing inside. It's not like it seems, but it's true. It's star spirit grass, which absorbs and transports the power of stars for growth. Xuanhuan clapped his hands and stood up. Looking at the star spirit grass all over the valley, he couldn't help but feel a little hot in his heart. Then what should we do next? Looking at the star spirit grass all over the valley, Ellie's beautiful eyebrows were almost shaped into the character Sichuan. Is it possible that they want to pick all the star spirit grass? Wait. Ellie looked at Joan suspiciously. That's right, just wait. Now the time is not ripe yet. When the time is ripe, it will be my breakthrough time. Joan nodded affirmatively. Oh, okay then. Ellie looked up at the night sky and could only say helplessly. At this moment, the night sky was clear, and the stars were particularly bright. The star power sprinkled by the stars gathered into starlight visible to the naked eye in this valley, falling down in strands, and then absorbed by the star spirit grass. And some that were not absorbed in time would form clusters of star essence above the star spirit grass, which made Joan jealous. However, he was afraid of destroying the growth of the star spirit grass, so he could only suppress the throbbing in his heart. Speaking of which, if it were normal, these star spirit grasses were scattered all over the continent, absorbing the power of the stars to grow, and basically would not attract too much attention. Even a star spirit mage like Joan could only feel it vaguely, but it was impossible to have a specific feeling. But this valley is full of star spirit grass. This should be because the bird carrying the star spirit grass seed container happened to pass by this valley, and the container in its mouth broke, and a large number of star spirit grass seeds fell. However, due to the obstruction of the mountain, it could not float farther, and then all fell into the valley, which formed the star spirit grass everywhere. The scattered star spirit grass naturally attracted limited star power, and it would not attract attention. However, such a large number of star spirit grass gathered, and the pulling force superimposed and resonated with each other, which pulled down a large amount of star power. Even some star power could not be completely absorbed and digested, which formed the star essence above those star spirit grass. And it was precisely such a large amount of pulling star power that attracted Xuanhuan's attention, and when it was about to mature today and pull more star power, it finally locked the target and arrived here. This can also be regarded as his opportunity. Do you remember that I asked you to recite it 3 times at the beginning of the chapter? Share on Facebook and you may get a surprise. The Journey of Creation from Fantasy to Reality author, Get a spark. Chapter 353. Recite the URL 3 times silently. Do you remember it? If not, I will ask again in the next chapter. It would be best if you share it on Facebook for me. As time passed slowly, the stars in the sky became brighter and brighter, as if they could be touched with your hands, and there was also an increasingly huge star power falling. Finally, some star spirit grasses were fully grown, and began to grow flower buds at a speed visible to the naked eye, which were silvery white, as if they were made of silver. After the flower buds were formed, they quickly bloomed and turned into silver flowers, and began to attract more star power. And this seemed to be a signal, and more star spirit grasses began to grow flower buds, and then bloomed into silver flowers. Under the gaze of Xuanhuan and the others, the entire valley of hundreds of square meters was dyed silver little by the countless silver flowers, turning into a silver lake. After that, even more majestic star power was pulled down in large quantities and immersed in the silver sea of flowers. Gradually, the flowers bloomed and withered, and began to bear silver fruits, and in each silver fruit, there were a lot of grass seeds. At the same time, there was a small group of star power below the core, waiting for the final moment to bloom. Finally, as time passed, the silver fruits began to mature. Puff. Accompanied by a series of sounds, the silver fruits began to explode one after another. Circles of small silver halos spread, merged with each other, and turned into circles of halo ripples, rippling in the entire silver sea of flowers. Even the entire silver sea of flowers seemed to expand suddenly. At the same time, grass seeds with a light silver halo burst out from the fruit, pulling the star power, slowly floating up, as if countless stars were rising. In just a short moment, the entire valley was already full of silver grass seeds, as if the Jotian star sea had descended to the world, full of endless stars. Then, endless star power fell, and countless laws and principles about the stars began to interweave in this valley. Under the influence of the core origin rules of the grass seeds, the endless grass seeds began to instinctively guide and sort out those laws and principles, and a strange breath filled it. At this moment, Xuanhuan and the others seemed to be in a vast and endless starry sky. At the same time, the two felt that there was a majestic existence, casting his eyes over, empty and vast, controlling the movement of the stars. At this moment, Xuanhuan and the others thought they were dead this time, and they couldn't help but close their eyes. This is not an opportunity, this is simply an endless abyss of death. Isn't the existence that controls the movement of the stars in the starry sky the Lord of the Stars? What good will ordinary extraordinary beings like them have when facing the eyes of the gods? Even if it was Xuanhuan, a 9th-level star spirit mage, facing the gaze of the Lord of the Stars, he would have only one end, losing himself and becoming a follower of the stars. As for Ellie, she would probably collapse directly, either deformed into a monster or dead. However, after waiting for a long time, the two of them only felt that the surroundings were empty, and there was a vague gaze lingering on them. Apart from that, there was no other movement, and the bodies of the two did not undergo any irreversible changes. What is this? Xuanhuan was the first to open his eyes and looked around in confusion. There was no change around, it was still the original valley, dotted with stars, which were the seeds of the star spirit grass. Valley/span they are slowly floating and moving according to some unique rules. Just one glance, Xuanhuan has been deeply immersed in it, and all his mind has become clear and transparent. Countless mysteries about this starry sky and the movement of countless stars appeared in his mind, making him deeply immersed. In just a moment, Xuanhuan began to absorb the mysterious knowledge in it frantically, turning it into his own accumulation of foundation, and seeing clearly the way to advancement in the future. A little bit of starlight began to dissipate from his body, and then condensed into twinkling small stars, and began to slowly revolve around him. A sense of emptiness and nothingness, and the stars were controlled by me, began to slowly emerge around him. Strands of star power began to gather from the surroundings, merged into the small stars outside his body, and merged into his body, baptizing and tempering his body and soul. On the other side, Ellie had already opened her eyes, looking at Xuanhuan, who was floating beside her and seemed to be surrounded by endless stars, and she couldn't help feeling a little anxious and uneasy. She just felt the vague gaze that was shrouding her body, but she didn't dare to move at all. She was fine, but if she implicated brother Xuanhuan, she would never forgive herself. But Xuanhuan's current changes also made him a little worried. Could it be that the Lord of the Stars was transforming Xuanhuan and wanted to transform him into a follower of the stars? But this didn't seem like it, and if this gaze was really from the Lord of the Stars, she didn't think she could still maintain her sanity now. How could such a high-ranking existence care about the ants underground? And if they did not deliberately restrain their breath and spirit, she could not think of any other situation except deformity and death in the face of their gaze. And would those beings deliberately restrain themselves for an ant like her? That was obviously not the case. What is the situation now? Her thoughts were in a mess, and seeing that Xuanhuan would not undergo any other changes in a short time, Ellie could not help but cast her eyes elsewhere. Looking at the valley that seemed to have turned into an endless starry sky, even with all kinds of thoughts in her mind, Ellie could not help but sigh inwardly that the star spirit grass was really magical. Before it matured, the star spirit grass might be a little magical, but that was it. However, when it matured and released its own seeds, it became unusually magnificent. Looking at the scene that seemed like the starry sky, Ellie gradually immersed herself in it, and a little bit of mystery gradually merged into her heart. Gradually, some star power began to be attracted by her, gradually integrated into her body, combined with her own power, to form another star power. Although it is also the power of the stars, there are some differences. They belong to the same source, but they belong to different paths. Like Joan, the star power in Ellie's body also overflowed a little bit, slowly around her, turning into star points, forming one star map after another, slowly rotating around her. Moreover, when these star maps are running, they occasionally form various light and shadow patterns, or Pegasus galloping, or holding a bow and shooting arrows, or the shape of a balance. Count carefully, and you will find that there are exactly 12 star maps. They are the 12 constellations widely circulated on the blue star, and combined with various myths and legends, as well as stories, they also have various magical powers. Do you remember that I asked you to recite it 3 times at the beginning of the chapter? Sharing on Facebook may have surprises.